The clarification, I presume, is accepted by the Minister. Now, 10 minutes. First 10 minutes for Deputy.
Thanks, Last Councillor. I think at the beginning of any discussion that relates to the housing crisis, because this legislation is directed towards trying to deal with the housing crisis, we have to start by reminding ourselves of the human reality of that. And that reality came home again in the last week, where a man in Dundalk died on the street as a result of the cold. And it is almost 2 years to the day since Jonathan Corrie died close to the entrance to this building. And those facts, those very stark, awful facts, are set against a background that the situation of homelessness has not got better since Jonathan Corrie's death, but has got very, very considerably worse. So for all the work, the talk, the plans, the publications, the announcements, the situation has got worse, and people continue to die in the streets, and the numbers of people on the streets in homeless and emergency accommodation, and in particular, and frankly it is a shame beyond shame for any government that we have now 2,400 children homeless, 85% of those in this city. It is beyond shameful. And I don't really see how anybody can say, I don't doubt that the Minister has put a lot of effort into this, but it's not working. It's just not working. And the central reason why it's not working is because overwhelmingly the reliance is on the market to deliver. And in everything the Minister does, there is the fear and the sensitivity, I think was the word, which almost made me scream, that the government feels it needs to have to a thing called the market. And I think we should remove the euphemism of the market, because the market is a euphemism for developers and landlords. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the market. We're talking about people who want to make money from property. And the government's entire policy is directed towards incentivising them, removing obstacles that they see to it, not doing anything that might annoy them. And by annoy them, it means not do anything that might suggest to them that they might make less money from property and housing. And they feel, and are obviously telling the Minister and the government, and it seems Fianna Fáil, as we saw in the Rent Certainty Bill, don't do that because we can't make enough money if you do that. And the government rolls over and says that's acceptable. So everything you do is circumscribed by essentially the fears, anxieties, and quite frankly, greed of the developers and the landowners and the landlords. And for that reason, you then end up doing things which at best will achieve very little and at worst may indeed be counterproductive. And that brings us to this bill. And let's be clear about this bill, Minister. You see, as Deputy Coppinger has already said, the primary reason that we have not got the famous supply of housing is because NAMA and the landowners and the developers have not seen it as profitable to deliver housing. That's why. It's not because of problems, and there are problems at local authority level. I'm not disputing that. But it is not because those problems are inherent to the democratic process of, if you like, planning and public consultation, but that is the knee-jerk view of your developer and landlord class. That's what they always think, right? It's bureaucracy, it's red tape, it's inefficient public bodies. That's the problem. Not us, it's them. Now, that's not to say, as I said, there isn't problems in the planning process and there aren't delays. But can I tell you, Minister, even with the legislative streamlining you're proposing here, in my opinion, it'll make no difference, because you know what the problem is at local authority and Port Pleanála level? A thing called staff. Staff. Not enough staff. So you can legislate all you like, and it won't make any difference in terms of the timescale, or if it does make a difference, it will be because the quality of planning, if you like, oversight will reduce in order to meet deadlines that you're setting. So you will get bad development, bad planning decisions and so on, because you're not providing the resources, but you're demanding the stuff is rushed through, but not actually addressing the central problem. And even if you do manage to speed up that process, as I said, you're still at the mercy of the developers themselves. I mean, an interesting piece of anecdotal evidence I got during the week is a lot of the planning, if you like, applications that are going in Dublin are for student accommodation and for hotels at the moment, right? Dennis O'Brien, I believe, is moving into student accommodation. Always a bad sign when he's moving in any particular direction, in my opinion.
Does it have a kitchen in it?
Because you can get lots of students into small spaces, you see, and there's a lot of money to be made out of that. And you can get lots of people into hotels, a lot of money to be made out of that. Not as much money to be made out of building decent and affordable residential property. So they go where the money is, and this will still encourage them and assist them in going where the money is, rather than delivering the actual affordable and social housing. But even if it did, it won't work. And as I've explained to you, Dún Laoghaire really illustrates this point, Minister. Even if the private developers deliver in a speedy time frame, and I don't think they will, unless you provide the staff and so on, and ultimately unless the local authorities do it themselves. I'll get on to that point in a second. But even if they do deliver in our area, it's going to make no difference to the affordability. Average house prices in Dún Laoghaire are €498,000. That is 160,000 higher than the average in Dublin, 210,000 higher than the average in Fingal, 230,000 higher than the average in South Dublin. Totally unaffordable. But you are leaving it to private developers who are going to charge that price to do it. And as I said to you yesterday, Minister, if the price starts to come down, rents similarly, one bedroom, average $1,800. $1,800 for one bedroom. Totally unaffordable. 3-bedroom, $2,280. Totally unaffordable. Right? If those prices begin to come down, and there's not enough money in it for the developers, which you keep saying and they keep saying is the big problem, they're not going to increase supply if price and rents come down. They'll stop at the point at which prices start to come down, because they're interested in price and profit. So even the supply will never equal the demand, because the only demand they're interested in is the demand that can pay the high prices or the high rents. They're not interested in absolute demand, they're interested in effective demand backed by money that is willing to pay these extortionate prices. And because they have a monopoly of control of the land, and you're giving them most of the control over what's going to be delivered, even in terms of social and affordable housing, why on earth would they develop or increase supply to the point at which prices will begin to drop? They're simply not going to do it. They've never done it in the past, and they're not going to do it in the future. And therefore, what we need is the direct build. And can I just say finally, in the last couple of minutes, on the whole issue of direct build, and what are the real delays here? Okay, Minister, the real delays, even on Part 8 planning and so on, which you're talking about reducing the amount of time that councillors will have to make decisions. The real delay, and we got a breakdown of this from Dún Laoghaire, is on the issue of the tendering process. The tendering process, the outsourcing of even the public or social housing that local authorities are being done. That is the bulk of the time. Now, unless we address that and have people employed directly to build on public land, what you're doing is going to make no or negligible difference to the slow delivery. That's what we need to address. We need direct labour, directly employed, to build local authority housing on public land. And that, by the way, last sentence, that will force the private developers to build. Because if the public begin to build, the public sector begin to build housing, that will then force the others to crystallise their land holdings into development.
Check the Tommy Brown.